So it's currently May 2026. And if you're in the creative field, and really if you're anything like me, you're likely feeling a specific kind of vertigo. It's the feeling of the ground beneath your feet moving, shifting, and becoming, unstable. And it's that low frequency hum of anxiety that you feel when you open a new piece of software or update the software and realize that a task that used to take you about 6 hours now takes you about 6 seconds. And here's the conversation that we're not having enough. This vertigo, and I think that we're all feeling this vertigo, isn't actually coming from the technology itself. It's actually coming from the Great Decoupling. Let me explain what this means. So basically, for the last century, and certainly for the last decade, we've been conditioned to believe a profound and structural lie that our value as human beings is inseparably linked to our output. We were raised on the Productivist Fallacy, the idea that if you aren't producing, you aren't valuable. We didn't just take the jobs. We became the labor. We turned our hands and our eyes and our technical expertise into our primary identity. We called ourselves creators, but in the eyes of the market, we were really just high-end producers. And now the machines are doing the producing. And they're doing it faster and cheaper and with a level of competence that borders on the uncanny. But AI hasn't just stolen our tasks. It has done something much more painful. It has exposed our addiction. It has pulled back the curtain on the fact that we've spent our lives building our worth on the labor of the hand. And now that the hand is no longer required, we're left staring into this mirror, wondering if there was ever anything else there. And this is the problem that we're solving today, because I think there is something else there. In this era of infinite automated output, we have to move from being a resource to being a source. And a resource is something that can be extracted and used up. Something like oil, right? But a source is where the water comes from in the first place. And if you define yourself by your utility, you are a tool. And in 2026, as we're all figuring it out, that tools are a commodity. But if you define yourself by your intent, by the specific and glitchy and human why behind the work, you become the only thing a machine can never replicate. We aren't losing our value, friends. We are finally being forced to find where our value actually lives. Well, my name is Patrick Four, and this is The Terrible Creative, where we have honest conversations about creativity, identity, and the existential weight of making things in 2026. Today's episode 64, and I'm calling it Stop Being a Tool, or Why It Was Never About Your Utility. So, last episode, we talked about the cost of getting good, the bunker we build out of our own competence. And this week, we're looking at what happens when the machines take that competence and turn it into a commodity. It's an episode about what happens when the doing disappears and all that's left is the being. Today, we're talking about three things. We're talking about the Productivist Fallacy. We're talking about the science of the leap and the identity audit. If this is your first episode, welcome. Feel free to jump around. These episodes are in no particular order sometimes. My email is always open. It's in the show notes. There's a bunch of other good stuff down there. Check it out. I respond to everything. All right. With all that said, let's get into it. So let's start with a story. I want to tell you about my friend Maya and my friend Chris. Maya is a high-end illustrator in Brooklyn in New York. And in 2025, she really was at the top of her game. She spent about 15 years in what I like to call the subterranean dirt of her craft. She mastered the specific and real and agonizing way the light hits oil paint, the way that a shadow isn't just a darker version of color, but a bruised purple or a deep vibrating green. She spent a decade and a half training her hand to obey her eye with the accuracy of a brain surgeon. And then came March 2026. A new AI model was released from Google, Nano Banana 2 Pro. She tells me that as she played around with it, her heart sank. Because suddenly the lighting style that took Maya 15 years to perfect could be mimicked by a stranger with a prompt just a few words long. And in 45 seconds, a machine produced what Maya used to spend a month laboring over. And when I talked to Maya, she didn't just say that she was feeling bad because of the money. She said that she was feeling hollow. That she looked at her brushes and just began to see sticks of wood. She felt like her practice was becoming a waste of time. She said, if a machine can do in seconds what took me a decade to learn, then what was the point of the decade? And here's the point, I think. Maya isn't just grieving the loss of a job. She's grieving the loss of her identity as a craftsman. And we have spent so long equating the work with the labor that when the labor is automated, we feel like the work has vanished. But Maya's craft never actually was the brushstroke itself. It was the way that she specifically saw the light before the brush ever touched that canvas. You see, the machine stole the stroke, but it can't steal the sight. It can't take your voice, which brings me to Chris. Chris is a headshot photographer in Seattle. He got in the game when he lost his job as a product manager for a tech company back in 2013. He was looking for something that he could build with his own hands, and he loved it. He loved the idea that he could control his own income. He loved the rhythm of the studio. He loved the challenge of making a really nervous lawyer or a tired software developer look extraordinary. He loved connecting with people. He often joked that his headshot sessions are really just therapy sessions with a free headshot. And Chris was good at this. Chris loves people, and people love Chris. He could take a nervous paralegal, self-conscious about her looks, and through his ability to connect, could make her not just look incredible, but also feel incredible. And it was because of that skill, he was doing pretty well. He was able to support his family. He had a small, light-filled studio in the Seattle neighborhood of Queen Anne. About 90% of his clients were in the tech industry. They were the executives that made the city of Seattle move. But since 2025, he had seen his revenue drop by 35%. And it wasn't that the world stopped needing headshots. It's that they stopped needing him to take them. His clients, the same tech workers who used to value his eye, started using AI headshot generators. And for a $20 subscription and a few uploads of iPhone selfies, a machine could give them a professional portrait in a charcoal suit that they don't own, standing in an upscale lobby that doesn't exist. And Chris sits in that Seattle Queen Anne studio, looking at the thousands of dollars worth of gear and glass that he had spent a decade accumulating and paying for. And he was realizing a brutal truth. The market had classified him as just a glorified printer. He thought he was being paid for the connection or the experience, but for 35% of his clients, he was just like this technical hurdle between them and the JPEG. And as soon as that hurdle was removed, they didn't look back. And this is the shadow side of Maya's story. If Maya is grieving the loss of her aesthetic, Chris is grieving the loss of his utility. Both of them are facing the same terrifying realization. If your value is in the doing, the clicking of the shutter or mixing the paint, you are a replaceable resource. And in 2026, resources are being replaced by cheaper alternatives. The lesson Chris had to learn, and the lesson that Maya is currently struggling with, is that doing was never the gold. It was never the precious gold. The gold was actually the witness. The gold was Chris's ability to see the insecurity in Chris's eyes and know exactly how to talk him out of it. You see, the machine can generate the pixels, but it can't sit in a room in a Seattle neighborhood and tell you that you are enough. So if you're looking for normalcy, I have some bad news. The data suggests that normalcy is gone. It has left the building. So according to the Yale Budget Lab's March 2026 report, freelancers like us in the creative sectors, designers, writers, photographers, programmers, are seeing roughly 25% to 35% of their daily tasks fully automated. We aren't talking about future threats anymore. We're talking about the current billing cycle. We are seeing what economists call the bifurcation of value, which is really defined in two parts. First is the production floor. And basic production roles, so like junior level roles or, roles like that, are seeing a 15% wage decline. And this is conservative. If your value proposition is, I can do this specific task, you are now competing with a tool that costs $20 a month and never takes a smoke break. Secondly, you have the strategy ceiling. Meanwhile, the creative orchestrators, right? These are people who can manage AI to deliver high stakes strategy and vision, are seeing, get this, a 30% increase in contract value. 30%. Now, let's address the BMW in the room, shall we? Because I know that some of you are listening to this and you're thinking, Patrick, I'm doing great. You're probably listening to this in your nice car, or in your studio. And you're thinking, I don't feel this. My books are full. My rates are up. My clients haven't mentioned AI once. You're just being a little dramatic here. And you might be right. For a while. If you aren't feeling this vertigo that I mentioned yet, it's likely because you are standing behind a moat. And for most of us, that moat is built on two things. First, the trust moat. This is the legacy of your relationships. Your clients aren't paying for your labor specifically. They're paying for the fact that they have known you for 10 years and they know you won't flake. They're paying for the comfort of a known quantity. You're living in the interest of your past reliability. And then there's the skills moat. And this is where I find myself to some extent. You've worked with the right brands. Your portfolio is a wall of high-end evidence that you know what the fuck you're doing. And maybe your marketing is dialed in. Maybe your SEO is solid. And there's a stream of new leads coming in. You have a signal of authority that AI doesn't have yet. Clients see your work as premium because the market has already vetted you. But here's the danger of the moat. It can make you feel safe while the climate is still changing. You see, a solid portfolio is just a record of how well you used to do things. Good SEO is just a way to keep people walking into your shop. But if your shop is primarily selling labor, if you are being paid for the technical execution of a task that is being automated for pennies across the street, eventually the moat will dry up. The legacy brands will notice the price difference The SEO will lead people to a service that they realize that they can do themselves. The moat, my friends, is not a strategy. It's a delay. The moat buys you time. That's all it does. It buys you the window that you need to realize that the market is no longer paying for the labor of doing. It's paying for the risk of deciding. And in a world where anyone can generate 100 iterations of a logo or headshot in an hour, the labor has become a commodity. And the value has shifted entirely to the person who can look at those 100 options and say, number 42 is the only one that represents this brand well. We're going with that. That person is taking the risk. And if logo number 42 fails, it's on that person. The AI doesn't get fired. You can't fire Google. You can't fire Anthropic or OpenAI. It's the person who chose the AI. That's who will be fired. You are being paid to be the person who is responsible for being right. So why does this hurt so much? You know, this idea of using AI. Why do we feel so much guilt when we use these tools to speed up our workflow? I mean, I know I do. I rely on AI heavily to do everything from manage day-to-day projects to research data for this podcast. And I think it's because we've been living inside what we talked about before, the productivist fallacy. This is the deeply ingrained belief that human beings are essentially just units of production in an industrial era hangover that tells us we are only as good as our last shift. And to understand why this is a trap, we really have to look at a distinction made by this philosopher named Immanuel Kant back in the late 18th century. Now, stick with me here because this feels more relevant, I think, in 2026 than I assume it ever did in 1785. And Kant argued that everything in the world really has two kinds of value. First, there's instrumental value. This is the value of a means to an end. Think of a hammer. A hammer is valuable precisely because it drives nails. Its value is entirely dependent on its utility. If a better and faster, more efficient hammer comes along, say a pneumatic nail gun, the old hammer isn't just lesser, it becomes irrelevant. It might even be discarded. It doesn't have a self to fall back on. It only has its function. The hammer's value and its ability to be a utility. So for the last century, the market has convinced us to view our careers and by extension, ourselves as instruments. And we turned our technical skills into our primary value proposition. We said, I am valuable because I can code this, right? Or I am valuable because I can retouch this photo. We made ourselves the hammer. And now, in 2026, the machine has become the nail gun. And then there's intrinsic value. And this is what Kant calls the end in itself. He argued that human beings possess a value that is independent of their utility. You aren't valuable because of what you do. You are valuable because of who you are, your consciousness, your agency, your ability to experience the world. You are the end. You are not the means. This is the Great Decoupling that I talked about earlier. For the first time in our history, our instrumental value is being stripped away. The doing, the labor, the technical execution is being handed to the machines. And this is terrifying because most of us have forgotten how to be anything but an instrument. We have spent so long being human resources, and I'm not talking about the department at your job here, that we don't know how to become human sources. Because if you define yourself by your utility, the machine is your replacement. But if you define yourself by your intrinsic value, by your perspective, by your history, by your glitches, by your humanity, by your specific human why, the machine becomes something else entirely. It stops becoming your replacement and starts being your tool. The crisis of 2026 isn't a loss of work. It's really a crisis of identity. We are being forced to remember that we are the ones the work is for, not the ones the work is done by. I want to give you a win here because it's easy to feel like the machines are winning everything. They aren't. In early 2026, the IDIBELL US Brain Cognition Group published a study in Advanced Science that looked at the neurological difference between AI creativity, whatever that means, and human imagination. And they found that AI is world-class at predictive recombination. It looks at everything that has ever been done before and predicts the most likely quote-unquote new version. It's just a really fast, really efficient librarian. And this is why on this podcast and in my book, I hammer, guys, on the fact that finding your voice, your specific human voice is so goddamn important. And I know it can sound like soft advice, right? Like something you'd find on some lame inspirational poster in an office that's about to lay everyone off. But in 2026, finding your voice is really a survival strategy. And when I talk about honest work, the kind that comes from the deepest and most subterranean parts of who you are, what I'm actually talking about is proprietary data. The machine pulls from a catalog of humanity. It has scraped the collective output of the world, but it doesn't have a catalog of you. It doesn't have the data on your specific traumas, your weird obsessions, or the way you felt when you were 10 years old and saw the Pacific Ocean for the first time. It doesn't know why you're drawn to that specific shade of rust red, or why you prefer the silence of a studio to the noise of a set. This is why I tell you all the time to do these terrible projects. The ones that no one asks for, the ones that don't make any sense on a spreadsheet, the weird, unremarkable work that you make simply because you think it should exist. The AI will never make these things because it can't pull from the catalog of your worldview. And if you make things that are marketable, you're competing with the machine. But if you make things that are honest, that are yours, you are standing on ground that the machine can't even see. The why behind your work is the only thing that keeps you from being a commodity. It's the difference between being a high-end printer and being a source. So in 2026, technique is a commodity. It's the baseline. If you describe it, a machine can probably execute it. But taste, however, taste is a premium asset. James Taylor wrote in his 2026 book, Super Creativity, about two archetypes for the modern creative. You have your centaurs and your cyborgs. First is the centaur. This is the split model. The human does the strategy and the high-level vision. Then the AI does the heavy lifting of production. You are the architect. The machine is the construction crew. The cyborg, on the other hand, this is the deeply integrated model. The AI becomes an extension of your very thought process. A brush that thinks with you, a code editor that finishes your sentences. In both models, the expert has been replaced by the tastemaker. Your job is no longer to be the technical master of a software suite. Your job is to be the master of curation. You are moving from I make things to I curate experiences. There's a big difference. Because that requires a totally different kind of practice. It requires you to stop studying how to use the tool and start studying why things work. It means reading more history, watching more films, spending time in the subterranean parts of your own brain, your own life. You are building a library of taste. So I want to invite you to do something really practical. It's an exercise that I'm calling the identity audit. I want you to take a piece of paper and I want you to draw a line just down the middle. And in column A, I want you to write at the top, technique. I want you to list everything that you do that a machine can do now, right? Maybe that's color grading. Maybe that's resizing images. Maybe that's basic drafting or writing standard web copy or summarizing meetings or whatever. And I want you to spend some time just reflecting on these things. Grieve this column. These things are going away. You probably won't do them in a couple of years. Acknowledge that this part of your labor is gone or will be gone. It is no longer you. And then in column B, I want you to write at the top, essence. And this is where it gets fun because I want you to list the things that the machine can't do. The way that you handle a client's difficult ego, right? or the specific trauma or joy that influences your color palette. That gut feeling that a design is wrong, even when the math says it's right. Your ability to connect two completely unrelated ideas to solve a human problem. What I want you to do is I want you to look at that second column. This is the signal. This is your actual career. Focus on that. Study that. And look for ways to offload from column A so that you can focus your time, your energy, your passion, your human capital on column B. Your mantra for 2026 should be this: I'm not the output in column A. I'm the observer in column B. So I want to leave you with one final image, if you can indulge me. In the economic world, there's a term that gets thrown around in boardrooms and on balance sheets, and it's called human capital. It's a phrase designed to sound sophisticated, but when you strip it all down, what it really is, it's an accounting term. It frames you, all of you, complex, weird you, as an asset to be managed, a cog in a wheel, something to be measured and maximized. No different from a fleet of delivery trucks or a server farm in the desert. Capital is something you invest in to get a return. And the minute a cheaper or more efficient alternative appears, well, capital is liquidated. In the eyes of the productivist fallacy, that's all you are. That's all you are, friends, is a resource. But you aren't a fucking resource. A resource is what you get when you bottle the water and ship it to the store. A resource is an extractable commodity that will eventually run dry. You, my friends, are a source. A source is the place where the water comes from in the first place. The AI can process the water. It can bottle it with beautiful, algorithmically generated labels. It can ship it across the world in milliseconds. But the machine can never be the spring. You are the spring. Your worth isn't in the capital that you provide the company. It's the source you provide to the world. Your value isn't in the content that you churn out on a daily basis. It's in the intent, the specific, human, weird why behind it. In other words, your value is your voice. Your unique, weird, human way of seeing and moving in the world. And if you're listening to this and you feel like the world is moving too fast, just take a breath. The doing is being handled. The labor is going to be automated. But this isn't an ending. It's actually an invitation. It's an invitation to stop being an instrument and start being an end in itself. So, friends, stop being a resource. Start being a source. Until next week. stay curious, stay courageous, and yeah, stay terrible.